afternoon. Let's start with section 1.2 in this video. We're going to begin with vocabulary. Here we have three really important words. We're going to start with a function. A function is some relationship between two variables where one variable depends on the other variable. Now the domain are all the values of the independent variable, and the range are all the values of the dependent variable. A quick example that we're already familiar with would be the example of y equals 3x plus 1. This is a function that we've probably seen at some point. The domain are all the values of x, which is the independent variable. And the range are all the values of y, or the dependent variable. Just to give you a picture of that, if you graphed it, you would start at 1, go up 3 over 1, and here's a graph of this function. We can see that there is only one value of x for each value of y, and for x, it is graphed everywhere. X would continue forever in both directions. So my domain would be all reals. All real numbers are in this domain. For the range, it's graphed vertically forever. So again, your y values could be anything. So your range is again also all reals. Now for a warm-up, if we want to determine the retail price R of merchandise, a store owner multiplies the wholesale price by 1.5. Now this shows that relationship between a dependent and an independent variable. The retail price is always going to depend on the wholesale price. Wholesale price doesn't depend at all on retail. Wholesale price could be anything, and we find the retail price from the wholesale price. So to write this equation, I would write retail equals 1.5 times the wholesale. Does everybody agree with that? Now to make a table of values, I'm going to plug in, first let's plug in 10 for W. And when I plug in 10 for W, 10 times 1.5 is 15. And now let's plug in 20. When I plug in 20 for W, I get back 30. Now let's take it up a notch and try a decimal. How about when R is 1.5? Hopefully you would agree with me that 15 times 15 is 225, so I'm going to get 2.25. I'd like you to try this next one on your own. Plug in 11 for W and see what you get back for R. I get 16.5, and hopefully we agree. Now at this point, please note that W is your independent variable. Thus, your domain are the values 10, 20, 1.5, and 11. Your range, your dependent variable, which is your retail, are the values 15, 30, 2.25, and 16.5. All right. Next, let's look at whether or not two things are functions. Right now, we're just going to look at data sets. Tomorrow in class, we're going to explore the vertical line test a little bit further, but for now, I would like us to just look at data set of points. We could graph these points, right? These values would be along the x-axis, and these values would be along the y-axis. In fact, let's go ahead and just graph them for funsies. If this is y and this is x, I have negative 3, 5 as my first point, negative 1, 6 as my second, 0, 5 as the third, 1, 6 as the second, and 3, 5 as the third. Now the definition of a function says that for each value of x in this case, one and only one value of y. So we look at our independent variable, which in this case, x is our domain, or our independent variable. And we look to see if it repeats. And you'll see that nowhere here does it repeat. Each and every one is different. That means that this is a function of x. Or I should say, y is a function of x. And so for each and every point, when I draw a line through it, my line only touches it once. That's our vertical line test we're going to be working with tomorrow. Let's look at one more example. Oh, I'm sorry. Is x a function of y? If we go back in the opposite direction and we make y the domain, in this case, does y repeat? It absolutely repeats. So is it a function? No. So for this first example, yes, y is a function of x. No, x is not a function of y. All right, let's try one more. How about let's do this one without a picture. Are there repeats on x? No. So is it a function? Yes. Are there repeats on y? Yes. So is x a function of y? No. What I'd like you to do for tomorrow is bring me in a sheet of paper with two set of data points. One set that you think is a function and one set that you think is not a function of x. I'm sorry, primarily we deal with this question. Is y a function of x? So I want one data set where y is a function of x and one data set where y is not a function of x. When you get to class tomorrow, we're going to graph them and we'll take it from there with the vertical line test.